Hey, good morning everyone, it's Tractor Man 44 here. Hey, today we have a dead skid loader. This is a Ford New Holland LX 865. It's like a 65 horsepower turbocharged 3-cylinder diesel. It'll kind of start, but it won't rev up, it won't run, just for a few seconds to shut off. So I've already opened it up and I've done some preliminary checks. I'm going to catch you up to where I'm at, and then we're going to go back to business seeing if we can figure out how to make it run. Now, it's obviously a fuel related issue. You just have to decide which portion of the circuit is what the issue is. Now, this is the fuel filter. Of course, it's got a water retention or a water collection port on the bottom that you can actually drain any moisture, any water out that may be accumulated. It's also got a canister, a filter canister mounted electric fuel pump right here. Whenever you turn the key on, you can hear the fuel pump start up and run for 5 or 6 seconds before it'll go into the other portion of what it is that, or the other portion of the start sequence. But it's got a pickup tube that goes right in here and right down to the bottom of the tank. As you can see right here, before I got it, an external fuel filter has been eliminated. First thing I did, pull the tube off, gently blew backwards into it in case the pickup filter inside the tank is plugged up, and I was able to just literally puff and I could hear bubbles blow in the tank. So there's no problem with the pickup tube inside the tank, even though I think there is some contaminated fuel. So once I did that, then I went ahead and removed the barb fitting in this O-ring boss fitting right here, or this O-ring sealed fitting right here, and made sure there was no obstruction right there. So then I went ahead and pulled the discharge of the pump, which goes down to the inlet of the injector, which right there in the center, and then went ahead and started it back up, and then seen if there was anything comes out the discharge. I couldn't get anything except a little bit of a spit coming out of the discharge the whole time the pump would run. So then I thought, well, I'll get some fresh fuel in a small container and put a brand new hose on the pickup tube right here, down into some fresh, clean fuel in a clean container. With the discharge line disconnected, start it up, it sit there and run. It wouldn't even create any suction or anything in the end of the hose or in the new fuel. And so I've determined that for whatever reason the pump's not pumping. So then, still not being deterred, I went ahead and pulled the fuel pump off, and I disconnected the passages one at a time. I was able to blow through and remove the filter, and was able to verify that all the passages that go into and out of the filter and into and out of the filter canister itself up here are definitely unobstructed, but nothing's happening with the fuel pump. So what we're going to do, we're going to remove the fuel pump, go in on the workbench, see if there's anything that's serviceable in that fuel pump. I don't know exactly what kind of pump it is, but we're going to have to go take a look at it and see if it's repairable. If it's might have some debris in it, I don't know, might get lucky, I don't know. But the worst thing we have to do more than likely is go ahead and change the fuel pump. But I've got this all loose now. That literally spins off just exactly like that. Just as clean as can be inside there. You can see the pump mechanism and all that. So I'm going to pull this stuff apart and take the rest of this stuff apart and just see what's happening inside there, if I can. And this is an O-ring seal right here. Whenever you attach that plastic nut back down on top of there, it's just an O-ring seal, as well as this and this. They're all just simple O-ring locking seals. Pretty dirty in there. Now, this is far from being laboratory conditions, but just about any time you work on anything associated with fuel, you want to keep everything just as perfectly clean as possible. Now, I disassembled this as far as I could get it, but I couldn't get it all the way taken apart because I didn't want to potentially destroy something that might be good. So I went ahead and reassembled everything back. In the event there's something inside, I've got it soaking right now with carburetor cleaner. And so I'm just going to let it set for a little while and clean that all out. Rinse it again with carburetor cleaner and then fresh fuel, and we're going to put it back on and see if that accidentally freed up something. But I do believe it was nasty fuel with a little bit of water that caused the issue. The pump motor runs, it just ain't doing what it's supposed to do. So we're going to find out. I got my parts and everything in. I went ahead and put in a brand new filter to replace the eliminated one. Remember, there was no filter in the line, even though the pictorial in the parts diagram shows one. It had been eliminated before I got the machine. So I went ahead and put a new one in there and replaced the fuel line pickup from that part up to here. I also went ahead and thoroughly cleaned the brand new fuel filter that we'd put in and cleaned all the nastiness out of the bottom of this water separator. And I've got my new replacement fuel pump from China. It's identical in pretty much all respects. It's actually got just about the same physical weight. The main exception I can see is all the components you see here that are plastic is actually stainless steel on the original. So that's probably going to make this thing unreliable. But because I've got so much contaminated fuel, I'd much rather destroy, a cheap Chinese one before I would spend the big bucks, the $170 or whatever for the actual Ford New Holland one that's identical to the original. But then again, I don't know that it's going to be identical to the original, but it sure has a much nicer price tag. So I'm going to take a chance with this one first and see what happens. I also used a positive displacement gear pump and sucked all the contaminated fuel out of the bottom of the fuel container, the fuel tank, and put another couple of gallons in and went ahead and sucked that out too to make sure I tried to get all the residual moisture or nastiness inside the fuel tank. So, and I put 10 fresh gallons in, about 9.5 fresh gallons in, and we're ready to go ahead and assemble this and see what's going to happen. I'd already verified that all the passages, all the fittings and everything, I'd removed everything that I could off of this filter to make sure everything was clear of any obstruction. Okay, so now I should be able to turn the key on. It should start the pump. The pump should go ahead and start pulling right out of the fuel tank. We should see it go through the filter, and it should go ahead and pressurize the fuel container. Well, it's a good sound. I can hear the pump pumping. Fuel filters, the inline filter is full, and she's pumping. I can feel it, and I can hear it, and I've got a leak. Kind of expected that. Probably should have tightened them down with channel locks. One thing about it, I don't have to bleed the filter now. Well, that's not good. Might have to bleed the injectors after all. I'm going to try bleeding the injectors. The injectors, 1, 2, and 3, are all loose. They're just a little bit coming out. Not bleeding real good. I'm hoping there's not an issue with the actual injector pump. We'll tighten these back up and see if it'll light off now. Well, I missed a little bit of the coverage disassembling all this stuff, but it's pretty much boring and uneventful. It's just a matter of taking off a whole bunch of stuff to get to what you want to get to. The reason we did this is because here's our injection pump right here, and this is going to be the drive gear right here that drives off of the shaft inside the block. And we've got to remove this, which was not accessible with the confines, with the blower shroud and everything in there. I could barely get my hand in there, much less operate a ratchet, and much less even see any timing marks that I'm expecting to find on the 2 gears. I believe we're going to go ahead and set number 1 cylinder to top dead center with both the intake and exhaust valves closed, and we're going to check and see if we have alignment of timing marks inside here on these 2 gears. That's where we're going to start anyway. And another thing I got to tell you is the real mechanics, people that actually do this for a living, probably would not disassemble it nearly as far as what I'm doing in order to do what it is that we're doing here, because they've got the specialty tools and everything, and they've also got the technique from years of experience working on this stuff. It'd be just like them trying to come to my trade and work on my stuff. There's give and take. You have to accept that. It doesn't matter because we're going to get to clean everything up and really do a lot of little maintenance and things that need to be done on this whole back end anyway. So this is just going to make it a whole lot easier on me. The next order of business is going to be disconnecting all the fuel lines. The discharge of the injector pump that goes up to feed the injectors. Be disconnecting all that. Take my solenoid wire off and also these other connections up here and get ready to pull the pump off. But then once that's completed, we will take the lines completely out in preparation for removing the injectors, have the injectors tested. Then we'll come back and pull this and then dislodge the the pump from the drive gear, which I'm assuming is going to have a drilled and tapped shaft, hopefully a keyed shaft on the end. That's what we've been looking for right there. Now, you know, I ain't really a mechanic, but we do work on a lot of stuff. You know yourself, when you pull any kind of an engine apart, whether it's a gasoline engine or a diesel engine, you have to take real care to make sure that you get everything reassembled in correct timing. So when you pull the distributor out of a gasoline engine, you need to know that what position it's in for reinstalling it, or you need to rotate the engine around to where number one top dead center on the compressor stroke and everything before you pull the distributor, note it, and then go ahead and reinstall it in that same fashion. Okay, now on a diesel engine, the injector pump is essentially the same thing as your distributor. You know, it is and it isn't. It is in so far as the fact that it has to be perfectly in time with the correct cylinders so that it injects the fuel to those respective cylinders at that specific time. If you just willy-nilly go and jerk an injector pump off because you've got a problem with the pump or whatever, and don't pin the pump if it has the capacity for being pinned, or figure out exactly where that pump is in relation to the actual engine's rotation, you're going to be in for a world of hurt whenever you put it all back together. On my LX865 New Holland, we have a bad fuel issue with the injector pump, and we had to pull it off. I can't take full credit for this, obviously, because I had to get a hold of my buddy that's a heavy equipment mechanic, and he kind of gave me a rough idea. As a matter of fact, once I'd taken the pump off, I took it over to his house to let him show me exactly what they mean by pinning the pump. And it's just simple as can be. Because we're used to taking apart gasoline engines and things of that nature, we rolled the engine over to where we were on the compressor stroke of number one cylinder, which on a skid loader is the one nearest the radiator, which is the rear, which is actually the front of the engine because they're backwards. But anyway, we automatically moved the number one cylinder to top dead center on the compressor stroke, and then double checked to make sure our timing marks was in alignment on the crankshaft and the camshaft, and then look for timing marks on the gear drive that goes to the injector pump, which there was none. So I went ahead and took a Dremel tool and went ahead and put me a T-shaped mark in alignment with the new mark I put on the drive gear that drives the injector pump. There's no real simple way of timing it, but on these Lucas injection pumps, and like I said, my buddy is a heavy equipment mechanic, and he just pointed it out to me perfectly. We verified that we took the pump off with the engine in a proper position. All we had to do is remove this little screw right here, or this little pin, and you'll notice there's a figure 8 shaped hole. There's a figure 8 shaped hole in the washer. Okay, so what you do, the one side of the 8 is larger than the other side of the 8, and the pin is just that much longer. You want to loosen this up right here and slide this from the small opening to the large opening, and then drive this all the way in with a wrench, and then that will push that pin just the thickness of the washer farther, but right in and lock the pump in the position that it needs to be in, so that when you reassemble it, it'll be in perfect time with the engine. So at any rate, on this Lucas pump, I don't know if it's the same on the other brands of pumps, but this one here has got that figure 8 washer, and the thickness of the washer is just the amount that pin needs to be inserted a little farther to lock the pump. Like I told my son, unless we tear into it and figure out what's going on, all we got is a 10,000 pound hunk of junk. So all we're going to do is just, make it a little bit lighter by taking some parts off of it. So we went ahead and tore into it, and we've got it on a downhill run. So hopefully that'll kind of help somebody if they're looking specifically for a Ford New Holland LX865 Lucas injection pump and how to pin the pump for removal. Hope this kind of helps somebody. Don't know if it will or not. And you know what? This is Trackman 44, and I'm out of here, guys.